One Piece chapter 976. Now this chapter is definitely one for the books because of the ending scene with the return of a certain character that we've been waiting for a very long time, and that is the return of the first son of the sea, JINBE. A fan favorite amongst the community just because of what he brings to the table when he's with the Straw Hats. JINBE has been a very big addition to the crew so far, and having him back on screen is great. And I knew this was going to be a big chapter just based on the reaction I was getting off of the community, given that people were acting a bit amped up more than usual on Twitter, telling other people to avoid spoilers and things of that nature. So I was a bit wary because I did not want to get spoiled. So for the most part, I kind of evaded Twitter for the time being till the chapter dropped. So I knew it was going to be a big chapter, but again, I do have some questions in mind because of how certain things played out. This is also something I think, a lot of people in the community have questions for as well, because of how this impacts Big Mom's portrayal in the story per se. But I'll get more into that in detail later in this video, but let's start from the beginning. Now the chapter starts off with most of the scabbards pretty much knowing that Kinemon's plan was unintentional, and this really goes to show that the scabbards do really know each other in terms of how they move, act, and personality wise. There's a strong bond between all the scabbards, and this applies to their loyalty to Odin as well. And Kinemon also mentioned that he might actually die in this battle today because he feels like he's used up a life's worth of luck, and which everyone else agrees, because for the most part ever since the beginning of this saga, right, Kinemon and company have been so lucky so many times. Like, many things had to have happened for them to actually be in the position that they are right now. Meeting up with the Straw Hats, the alliance with Law and Luffy to defeat Kaido, getting to Zou. Things for the most part have been more on the negative side of things for them in terms of how they intended things to play out, but it still turns out well for them in the end. And if you guys remember, the first time we met Kinemon was in Punk Hazard, and for him everything at that point in time was in shambles. He was caught up by Law in 3 places, and those parts of his body were separated on different parts of the island. He was separated from Kanjuro and Momonosuke. He was in the worst possible predicament that anyone could be put into. So luck is a very big part of this, so I like how that was been mentioned here. Now here Kanjuro starts to make his move to report back to Kaido and Orochi, in which we have Kamawa to counter him. And here he draws a well-drawn bird to escape, in which everyone is surprised because for the most part Kanjuro was always bad at drawing. Again, this goes back to the persona that he played while he was with the scabbards, and that was also something that puzzled us because we thought that this might be something Oda uses to nerf characters with Amazing Devil Fruit, which Oda still does, right? Usually they have a specific character trait that doesn't allow them to use their Devil Fruit to its full potential, just like Kizaru. And so I thought that he was one of those characters, but long behold, Kanjuro actually knew how to draw. And it's interesting because he drew a swan, which I believe is the symbol of the Kozuki clan. Now Kanjuro also states that he knows that Hiyori is alive and that he's going to kill her once he finds her. Now my thing here is that it's kind of ridiculous that no one was able to save Momo, given that given the amount of powerful characters that we have here. We had Law, we had Luffy, Law especially because we know that Law, he can easily shambles or save Momonosuke with his room, but then again they were quite far away from the shore and Law doesn't really care about Momonosuke, and it's only just now that they hear news about him being the traitor. But it's still kind of weird, but I do think that there was a reason for this. Now Sanji does try to save Momo, but Kanjuro uses his ability to make a cloud with his hair. Now I've always thought that Kanjuro's fruit had potential, and what we're getting here proves it. Kanjuro seems to be very proficient with his Devil Fruit ability, and we have to remember that he got his fruit at a very young age, so I'm not surprised at his mastery. Now here we have Momo telling Kanjuro to stop, in which he incites more fear to Momo by telling him that everyone here is going to die just like Odin and Toki. And I guess this is sort of progression on Momo's part where he realizes that he's obviously not the same person as Odin, right, and not the person that people want him to be, and which is a different response from the one he gave Kaido 20 years ago, whereas he stated that he was going to be a warrior just like his dad, right? And Momo basically tells everyone that they shouldn't worry about him and that they should focus on the goal at hand, and that he's going to get out of this predicament by himself, even though he knows it's impossible for his current self. And I really like that, and it's almost like a coming of age for Momo, whereas he's trying to become better, and even Luffy commands him because he's acting in a way in which he's not going to become a liability to the alliance. Now Luffy states that all he needs to do is survive and that he will eventually save Momo. So this is also a build up for Momo and Luffy's relationship as well. So I'm looking forward to this and how things are going to play out for Momo. Maybe he's going to meet up with Kaido again, and perhaps Kaido sees that growth in Momo. And we also know that Kaido had questions for Momo and the Scabbards, which was mentioned a few chapters ago. So we might also get that dialogue between Momo and Kaido at Onigashima. Obviously Orochi would try to kill Momo, but with Kaido there, he has more saying, right? Now the alliance start heading towards Onigashima. Obviously we have Kid here, trying not to get trapped in the Straw Hats' pace, and the Minks literally forced their way on Law's ship. Again, I'm really interested in Kid amongst the three of them right now, just because we need a lot more on Kid, right? Now here they start getting attacked by cannon fire from afar, and it's revealed that they have long range cannons, and by keeping their distance they have the advantage. And this was all possible because of the factories in Wano and all the weapons that they have there. And of course they weren't able to get far because the GOAT JINBE makes his return. Obviously this was the highlight of the chapter for me, and probably one of the reasons that this chapter was trending on Twitter, which is always great to see because it's really hard for manga to trend on Twitter. And JINBE gives this introductory speech about his origins, what he did in the past, and how he came to Wano to join his crew in the battle against Kaido as the new member of the Straw Hat Pirates. And what's very interesting here is that JINBE is given the title box as a member of the Straw Hat Pirates, and that's a moment that a lot of us have been waiting for ever since he joined during Whole Cake Island. It wasn't official back then, but with this chapter everything is set in stone. JINBE is officially one of the Straw Hat Pirates, acting as the helmsman of the crew. This was definitely the most hype moment of this chapter and the highlight for sure. And here you can see that Law and Kid are surprised. It's almost like Luffy just seems to be at the center of attention, so it's no surprise that they are kind of jealous of Luffy right now, just because it's like Luffy has a one up against them. And of course you have JINBE telling Luffy that he came back as promised, so that was great. Now a lot of people, and myself included, thought that JINBE's arrival to Wano would be a lot later, maybe during the war. So again, I think Oda is trying to wrap up all the loose edges before going into the war, so he doesn't have to deal with them later. Now something I could see happening would be Marco and the others coming in during the war at a clutch moment, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be JINBE, and to be fair, we need a lot of fighters in Wano, and JINBE is a very huge addition to the alliance. But again, I think Marco will be that guy that shows up unexpectedly during the war, but we'll see how things play out. Now there's many questions to be said, and the first one and the most important one is, how did JINBE make it past Big Mom? Now we know that Big Mom came to Wano before JINBE, so the assumption at that point in time was that something happened, which is still possible because JINBE can reveal this like in the next chapter. Now granted, JINBE did have his crew and the Vinsmokes when they went up against Big Mom, but again they were going up against an enraged, healthy Big Mom who had the intention of killing everybody that was there because of the mass destruction that happened at Whole Cake, and also because she lost a lot of reputation from that. So a lot of people were expecting JINBE to lose an arm or be injured in some way, but again he showed up to Wano just fine. So it really makes you wonder what happened. Now I personally think that some form of exchange happened, because I feel like if they just escaped on their own, that sort of puts a stain on the Yonkos or just Big Mom specifically. So something may have happened, and hopefully JINBE gives us more answers in the next coming chapters. And if you notice, we're not sure if JINBE came with his crew. From what it looks like, he's alone, and perhaps you might even get a dialogue between JINBE and Sanji, because I know Sanji would like to know what happened to the Vinsmokes, even though he says that he doesn't care. But again, just my quick thoughts on the chapter. Where do you guys see this going? I'm just glad that JINBE is back on the crew again, because being the voice of reason that the Straw Hats need, this is going to be good. JINBE is such a good addition to the crew, so I'm expecting a lot of great things moving forward. But again, comment down below what you guys think about this chapter. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe for more One Piece content. It is Pharaoh, and I will see you folks later. Peace.